We were in the NICU, and I felt completely hopeless and out of control. I didn't know what was going to happen with my son. I met my wife in 8th grade, and we were high school sweethearts. We would go to church on Sunday together. We weren't living out our Christian faith, at all during the week. We got married, we bought a house, and then we started having children. Our first child, we were pregnant with Grant. My wife, the amniotic fluid was low, and so they induced her early. They did an emergency C-section. That all went well. From what we could tell, everything was fine, and he was healthy. It was 2 days later that I was holding him, and one of his legs started ticking until eventually his whole body was seizing. I can still remember for the first time feeling completely out of control and completely at a loss and hopeless. A neonatologist sat us in a room and told us that the left side of his neck, the artery was completely blocked, and that he had a stroke during labor. My wife and I completely fell to our knees, said, "God, we are not in control." There was a moment where we went to a pumping room. Whoever was there last had left worship music on. And we walked in, and for the first time in the middle of all that chaos and turmoil, we felt hope. It was in those moments where we prayed to God, we're all in. When Grant was 6 months old, he had a follow-up MRI. The main artery in the left side of his neck was completely open. The clot was gone. Most of the left side of his brain had healed. And so Grant really is our testimony. We were able to fully understand what it was like to live out a Christian life in its full extent, biblically. My wife and I found Abundant Life, and we started taking next steps immediately. Through that process, we both decided to get baptized. We went through first steps, and we felt like we were plugged into the church, but we didn't know where God was going to lead us in the church. I was having lunch with a mentor of mine, Steve Brown. I was telling him some ideas that I had on what I could do with ministry leadership. He, behind the scenes, talked to Crystal with Agape Pamoja, and he didn't know, but Agape Pamoja had bought an event center. So Steve calls me and he says, "You won't believe this, but I've got a great opportunity for you. You run an event center. I want to hook you up with Agape Pamoja so you can help them figure out where they are with running an event center for the Congolese community." There's been so many opportunities that my eyes have been open to that I wouldn't have been aware of before. The Congolese community has definitely reconciled my family to strive to be more relationship and community oriented. My kids can live cross-culturally and see the full extent of God's beauty through that process. I did the Live Sent class, and I had the opportunity to help lead the Congolese group and see where God is at work in our city and where God is at work in the world. Last summer, I decided to go to Kenya with one of the teams from Abundant Life. We went to an orphanage. There was a young leader in his early 20s. He could have went to college. He had that opportunity. But instead, he chose to stay at the orphanage, to lead the orphanage that his dad started, because he felt called by God to do that, to stand in the gap for all of these kids. So to see Paul feel convicted by God and stand in that gap convicted all of us. Trusting God is so much richer. The plans that he comes up with are so much greater than what we can come up with. Owning and operating an event center never would have been something that I would have planned out. Something that I've tried to do differently at the Stanley is more of a servant leadership mentality where we're really trying to help our people grow. For some people, this is the biggest day of their life. And so to make that a reality and then even exceed those expectations, if we can be a blessing in that way, then that is what it's all about here. God's kept his promises in my life. I've seen him heal my son, and I've seen him work through my family with cross-cultural ministry. If you feel like you might have a heart for missions, if you would just take the Live Sent class, for sure, by the end of it, you're gonna know if you have a heart for missions. And not only are you gonna know if you have a heart for missions, you're gonna know all of the opportunities, both locally and globally, where you can make a difference. Your life could be completely changed.